Ready to go at 6 o'clock, Mayor Borman.
Okay, roger that. That's what I'll do. Assuming that the clock on my computer is accurate, I'll go by that.
Whenever you're ready, Mayor Borman.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms. Danaj. So welcome to everyone to the town hall regarding the Heliport lease renewal. And I appreciate that we're now in competition with Premier Kenny, who's just at this moment supposed to be going on television to discuss new restrictions. But just before I really get the town hall started, I'd like to acknowledge that the town of Canmore is located within Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. And in the spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge and appreciate that I live, work, and play in the traditional territories and home of the Yahe Nakota Nations, which includes the Bearspaw, Wesley, and Chiniki bands, the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation. And this is also Region 3 of the Métis Nation. Just as a prelude, I want to make this clear that this is a town hall, which is a non-statutory event. It's not like a public hearing, which many of you are familiar with from a month or so ago. This is a town hall that just provides an opportunity for council to hear from the public in regards to, specifically regards to the Schedule D, or now Schedule C, of the revised heliport lease that was presented to council fairly recently. And the town hall was initiated through a motion of council some time ago to provide this opportunity to the public. So a couple of notes. If the meeting should happen to go offline due to any technical difficulties, just re-enter the meeting with the same link that you used to get in just now. I'll note that we don't have a specified time limit for speakers, but we ask people to keep it brief. There may well be a number of people that hope to speak, and we've established or created a 2-hour opportunity. If you'd like to speak, please indicate that in the chat area, and you'll be called upon when it is your turn. Essentially, we're looking to hear from the public. If there's questions being asked, administration will track them and try to provide answers at the end of the town hall, or perhaps on the town website. If you don't want to speak, but have a relatively simple question that you'd like to ask, you could email your question to heliport@canmore.ca, and we'll try to answer it after the speakers have had their turn. We're asking that people don't use the raise hand feature on Zoom. I just, again, remind everybody of the council, all of council is here to listen to the feedback, which will be one of the many factors that council will consider when it comes to approving a lease renewal. And as many of you will know, the next step in this process is scheduled for June the 2nd, when council will consider the approval of the lease renewal. joining us here, as well as the council, as well as all of the members of council. Robin Dinage, who's the manager of communication, is helping to manage the town hall, as well as Georgina Houston, who's back scene managing people, and Stephen Hannes, who's the manager of facilities, is also engaged here and will be prepared to weigh in if necessary. There won't be any minutes of the town hall taken, and speakers' names will not be recorded as part of an official public record. That's a format that's dictated for a public hearing, but this is quite a bit more informal than that. And I think that's all of the introductory words I need to provide you with. Ms. Dinage, if you have anything else to add that I've missed?
Thank you, Mayor Barman. We have had about 9 people request to speak, so I can read out the first name. And just to remind everyone to please only use the chat just to put in your request to speak. No other comments, so that I can keep track of that. So the first speaker is Nadej Luquet, and I apologize in advance if I'm pronouncing anyone's name incorrectly.
All right, can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
I want to register to speak.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Sorry, just before you start, I'd ask everybody to make sure they're muted if they're not actually speaking this time. We're getting some background noise from some attendees. Thank you. Go ahead, Nadej.
All right, good evening. My name is Nadej Luquet. I have been a resident of Canmore for 18 years, and I live on Riverstone Road. The heliport noise problem is real. Persistent helicopter noise is a well-studied phenomenon with various health impacts. Noise registers at 60 to 70 decibel just on my deck during takeoff and landing of helicopters, and know that 70 decibel is 10 times higher than 60 decibel. So this is actually loud enough to make a conversation difficult, and it's just below the danger zone for noise. So if we have 45 flights a day, that's 90 takeoff and landings, and that's essentially 3 hours of noise throughout the day. So just imagine your neighbor car alarm going off 90 times a day for 2 minutes at a time, day after day after day. That's what I live through in my house. So over 90% of the heliport flights are actually sightseeing flights, and this number has increased from 74% between 2010 and 2017, and these flights are really the problem. The heliport of today is not the heliport of the 90s, and neither is Canmore. In addition, the helicopters used for sightseeing in Canmore are particularly loud, and they were originally built for military and industrial operations. They are in fact no longer used for tourism operations in many other locations in the world, just because they are so loud. So the proposed lease would reduce the maximum number of sightseeing flights from 60 to 45. So that sounds like a great idea, except that 45 is still above the number of sightseeing flights that we currently see out of the heliport. So the new lease essentially means business as usual and zero change to the impact on residents and visitors. Climate action and air quality clauses that are included in the proposed lease are hopes and prayers. I think we've all have had enough of hopes and prayers lately, so it would be nice to see something concrete. We are in a climate emergency, and as such, must take a stand against high GHG emitting activities, and heli sightseeing is one of them. The proposed clauses are weak and essentially just lip service. They like baselines, goals, metrics, and penalties if the tenant doesn't meet the agreed target. The noise reduction clause, well, you can same as above. The current lease has a similar clause, in fact, which has had no noticeable results. The heliport tenant, in fact, is in breach of the Canmore noise bylaw. And included the definition of what noise is in our Canmore bylaw, which is any sound which either a noise or disturbs persons, blah, 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 blah. You can read that for yourself. So the lease, the old one or the current one and the proposed one include the Fly Neighborly Program clause. And again, here it's aspirations, but there's actually no consequences if the tenant breaches their promise on this. And the bottom line to me is that a good neighbor doesn't need a good neighbor clause. They just are a good neighbor. Alpine Helicopters is not a mom and pop shop, but it's a $40 million company. And their parent company, Fortress, that owns the helicopters, is a multi-billion New York hedge fund. So I think that their priority is their bottom line over their impact on a small community. Note that rescues and parks work, which is a great benefit to our community. I don't think that anyone denies that. That's a standalone business, and it was in operation well before tourist flights started. So as an example, the Parks Canada contract alone is worth $2 to $4 million annually, depending on the year. The contract is awarded through a federal competitive request for proposal process where several bidders submit proposals. And in this case, Alpine was awarded the contract. Another large contract is the one with K Country. Now the good news. The solution is simple. Eliminate or greatly reduce the sightseeing flights and the problem goes away. And we're back to a manageable heliport. It's simple. And keep in mind, at the end of the day, the town is not responsible for helping the tenant keep their bottom line. The heliport is a municipal resource that should serve the community and not private interests. Thank you very much for your time. We're counting on you to make the right decision for the future of Canmore. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For other speakers, I would encourage speakers to stick to the response or the feedback on Schedule D. This isn't really about the company itself, but it's about the lease and specifically the Schedule D. Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
sharing your perspective.
So we
And
now,
there's many untruths in that perspective, so somebody
would
should
ask,
check their
whoever's-
facts.
Hello. Yeah. If everybody will keep their mics muted until it's they're asked to speak. Thank you.
Mayor Barman, we have about 17 people who have requested to speak so far. And the second person on the list tonight is Trent, I believe from Grotto Mountain Village Residents Association.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I'm Trent from the Grotto Mountain Village Residents Association, and the town had contacted our association to be a stakeholder in the renewal process for the heliport. Main reason is that the heliport is in extremely close proximity to some of our residents, 222 meters, to kind of do measurements off of a map. Speaking with the board, we decided to be a stakeholder, and our main concern was to have the reduction of the noise from the heliport as much as possible, from reducing the flights or even the possibility of relocating it, just outside of town. We sent out the minutes to everyone in the community, and we only had one person that had come back that said that they weren't, affected by them. They were very neutral. They weren't against us with this position of getting the reduction of noise that was coming from the heliport. So out of 105 residents that we have emails for, there are some people, of course, that aren't going to have check our general minutes, but easily say that we have 80 residents in our community that are affected and would like to see the reduction of the noise. Just some other background of the Bell 206. It's the second loudest helicopter in its class. And has no modifications that can reduce the noise that is coming from it. That's what I have to say in regards from being a representative of the community association. But for me personally, for the lease renewal, there's been a 10-year lease for the last renewal, and this year I think it should be a 3 to 5 year lease renewal, as the Stony Nakota Casino has given them, Alpine, a 5-year lease. So I don't see why the town can give a shorter lease than the previous 10-year. I am pro-rescue. I am pro-helicopter. I'm not anti-helicopter at all. I enjoy the backcountry skiing and to heli access lodges. I'm also part of the gondola rescue team for the Sulphur and Sunshine gondolas that we do service. So having access to helicopters is of course part of our job if we were need to have an evacuation. And looking for the flight path for the Alpine helicopters, this of course is just for the tourist helicopters, but being in a helicopter for a non-emergency, non-rescue flight for the gondola rescue team, this was a picture taken a few years ago from the helicopter, and it looks directly down on peaks of Grassy. And just like Nadesh had explained, this goes against the Fly Neighborly program, which is also promoted by the National Association of Helicopters to avoid resident areas whenever possible. You know, this is going against those Fly Neighborly programs. You know, a map of where it was. This is a picture of later on in the flight. That's Peaks of Grassy, so you can see our flight plan. And obviously, we are now on the path of going into the departure, or sorry, to the arrival at landing. Approximately, this is the flight path that we did take coming around from Rundle Mountain from Sulphur. An easy alteration of the flight path would have reduced the noise that would have been affecting the Alpine or affecting Peaks of Grassy. I believe that Alpine needs to be held responsible for part of being on the lease for, you know, the Schedule D for the Friendly Fly program. Whether it's a third party or whether it's someone from the town that looks at all of their flight plan to make sure that if they need to, they can go around and not fly over top of residentials. If Alpine Helicopters needs to, and of course they have full approval in a rescue situation to fly out and rescue anyone, I give them full reins to buzz everyone else's in town. And I definitely do feel for those people that need to get rescued when the helicopter does start up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 6:30, whenever dawn is. Those people that need that rescue have been in a very cold environment overnight. So and yeah, that's all that I have to say. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much, Trent.
The next speaker is Heather Gibb.
Good evening, Heather.
Hello, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I just very briefly, the town of Canmore had a climate emergency statement a couple of years ago. And in looking at the draft lease, I'm really disappointed that the language is so vague. Particularly since this language is going to be picked up in subsequent leases that the town negotiates with other providers. Other speakers have mentioned that the lease really just talks about aspirations to make improvements, to do research. And what I'd like to suggest and urge that the town really tighten it up drastically and really insist that the tenant develop, for example, a climate action plan that meets or exceeds the town's climate action plan if the lease is going to go on for 10 years or more. That takes us past 2030. You know, we are in a climate emergency. We heard the heads of government of both the United States and Canada last week really increase their commitments. We have such a narrowing window to try to put in place measures that will buy us enough time to let other measures have an effect. So I really urge council to look very carefully to require the tenant to actually show that the tenant is making progress against measurable time-bound targets. And I would also like to urge the council and the tenant to make this information public. We really do need to have confidence as members of the public that the town is moving forward with its climate goals. And the only way we can do that is if the data is public and we can all participate in moving forward. So I thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Colleen Campbell.
Colleen, hi, how are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm good, thank you. I hope you're all well as well. Thank you for this opportunity, even though it has a different kind of impact. I actually live 600 meters from the landing zone at the heliport, and I've lived in my house for 41 years. Yes, the heliport was there when I moved in. It was fairly new, and it was an absolute boon for rescue and research. And I was involved with both those communities through my climbing activities. And starting in 1990, I was involved in the wildlife research. And we also used helicopters to get us into the backcountry and to make that work much, much easier for us. There was only one tourism-oriented flight a day on 2 days of the week back then. The helicopters took all the luggage up to Shark Mountain. People drove to Shark Mountain, and they were helicoptered into Assiniboine Lodge. And some people walked out or skied out, and some people flew out. But they just flew in and out from Shark Mountain. And so the helicopter left Canmore, did its work, and then came back to Canmore, just on 2 days of the week. Right now, tourist flights are completely different. Some days they are so ubiquitous that I grit my teeth and I tighten my shoulders every time I hear a takeoff or a landing. It's relentless. Last summer, I noticed how wonderfully quiet it was. Because of COVID, I was reminded how I used to spend hours in my garden. Now, when the tourist flights start up again, even though they're still quite intermittent, every time our government eases their restrictions, it seems the heliport gets busy. I retreat inside again, and I like being outside. I like being outside in the wintertime. I used to enjoy my garden. I used to do everything outside. I used to take my computer outside to work. I used to have coffee on my deck every single morning. I still do that in the winter, sometimes walking around in my big duvet just to look at what's happening. Okay, we have a noise control bylaw. We have a noise control bylaw with not a lot of teeth, I think, because of course it's complaint driven. And clause 2.7 says noise means any sound which either annoys or disturbs persons or which injures, endangers, or detracts from the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of persons within the boundaries of the town of Canmore. Those of us who live in the noise impact zone of the heliport have known for years that making complaints through any process is kind of pointless. Alpine has never had to bid for exclusive use of the heliport, and it's not small. And more importantly, even though there's a committee we can go to with our concerns, there's not much accountability that appears to exist. It's been commonly known for many years by those of us who have had questions about the heliport operation that taking a concern to the monitoring committee is like dropping something into quicksand. When you turn your back to walk away, the evidence of your endeavors simply disappears. Alpine could be a good neighbor. However, the leasing process and the lease conditions combine with the lack of accountability, and it casts them into the role of a corporate bully. There are so many reasons why the new lease for the heliport needs to be tightened. It should be as rigorous, at least, as a landlord-tenant agreement for any other industrial or personal property. The town of Canmore has this opportunity to make an agreement with Alpine that holds them accountable in meaningful ways. Climate emergency, air quality, efforts to reduce noise, and benefits that may accrue to the company should all be monitored in meaningful ways. Right now, those meaningful ways are missing from the conditions of the lease. Data should be shared routinely with the town of Canmore, not simply on request. Please don't leave us with another 10 years of heliport status quo. I know that you have been offered many clear and reasonable suggestions for changes that would benefit all of us. The community would benefit, and the tenant would benefit as well. An accountable tenant would be a good neighbor, and we would treat them as such rather than one we think of I think of them with a really dismissive, oh, those guys. I'm sometimes rancorous and angry about them. Please take into account what you're hearing from the residents, many of whom are participating this evening in this rare opportunity. And many of us, as Trent pointed out, represent many, many more. Stopping the tourist flights would be a kickstart for Alpine to become once again a good neighbor. They should be as good as the neighbors we have living with us on our streets. Noise reduction would be only one of the many benefits that would accrue to neighbors and to the Bow Valley in general. Thank you, and thank you very much for this opportunity to share my thoughts.
Well, thanks for joining us this evening and sharing your perspective.
Good to see you.
See you, Colleen.
We now have about 21 people who have requested to speak tonight, and the next on our list is Gord Sturman.
Mr. Sturman.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
My video won't start. Trying to start it.
Okay.
Oh, hang on. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking my call. Nice to see you all. My name is Gord Sturman. I've been a resident of Canmore since the late 70s, or my family and I have been. We live in the Larch area. We're not affected directly by Alpine's operations, so I do want to say that right away. And also, I'm the owner of White Mountain Adventures. We're one of two heli hiking companies that have been working with Alpine for over 20 years. And I'd just like to speak to a few issues. I can't really speak to the noise or the smell because I don't live in that area and I'm not directly affected. But regarding other items of their potential lease that people have brought up, I'd like to just mention a few things that I'd like to comment on. One is it has been brought up, people are concerned about effects on wildlife by helicopters. And from personal experience and 20 years of heli hiking operations, I would say we are most closely associated with what happens with helicopters and any impact on wildlife. In short, the impacts on wildlife are virtually zero. We land in an area behind Mount Lady McDonald. There are herds of 50 to 100 bighorn sheep, lots of marmots, occasional grizzly bears. In over 20 years, we've not seen any change in the movements of animals. In fact, bighorn sheep, they're within 100 meters of where we land. They don't even move. So I think if anyone bringing up the question about wildlife impacts, I don't believe there are any. I'd also like to mention the greenhouse gas emissions, which of course we all want to do our best to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and everything we can do is commendable. I don't believe though that you can ask a business or a person to, as a part of their lease or their contract, to make greenhouse gas reductions without At the same time, requiring everybody to make them. So for instance, if you said part of the lease was requiring Alpine to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, then you'd have to ask Bremner Engineering to, stop using their diesel trucks. So I think that's a red herring that's been thrown in there. I don't think that's a valid argument to be made in this case, even though, greenhouse gas reduction as much as possible is necessary. And finally, to the concern about the heliport and when it was built and people living here now. And yes, when the heliport came here, and I was here before that, yeah, there was one tourist flight, maybe, but there were also 3,000 people. Now there's 15,000 people. There's a lot more industries. There's a lot more of everything. And I don't think it's also not a valid reason to move a business. It would be like saying, if, I moved into this house and my neighbor had a small house and now they're tearing the house down and building a bigger house. I can't really complain because that's a legal part of what they can do. So yes, the town has grown, the heliport operations have grown, but I don't believe that that is a valid reason that the town should consider. The noise and the smell, certainly, I don't live there, so I can't answer that. I can say that after having worked with Alpine Helicopters for 20 years, they are a good corporate citizen. They began looking at making changes to their operations 5 years ago, and I spoke with them at the time, and they talked about things coming up. They've agreed they're going to change their flights, remove the 12-minute flights. It's not smoke and mirrors, it's real stuff. The fact that they're a large company should have no impact on your decision making. And finally, as a taxpayer, I don't believe the town should force Alpine Helicopters to make any further concessions. And giving them anything less than a 10-year contract is very poor business practice. I believe I also speak for the majority of Canmore people who aren't speaking up today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gordon.
The next speaker is Frank.
Frank Lipchuk?
Yes.
Well,
Frank?
Litchuk. Well, was that okay?
Yes, you were.
Good. I didn't say anything bad.
No.
And I didn't, shit on anybody.
Hello there, everybody.
Hi, Frank.
Hi there. Can I share the screen, please?
Go ahead.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So my name's Frank Lischak, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Bow Valley Helicopter Noise Alliance. It's a lot to say. So in further references to that, I'll just say we or us, if that's okay. To give you some context, I've got about a 9-minute presentation here, so I'll try to be as succinct as possible with the points. First of all, who are we? We reluctantly organized in 2018 because there was really no other option. We include residents from north and south of the valley. We have a dozen or so on our working committee, plus an email list of about 80 households. We try to be fact-based, respectful, and we don't use social media. And I think it bears repeating that we all support rescues and backcountry services, and that includes backcountry lodges and heli-hikers. I don't consider those as part of the helicopter tourist flights. Really, this is about flight seeing tours, and until the pandemic, that was about 4 out of every 5 flights at the heliport. And if speakers want to talk about rescues, well, we already understand that. We get it. So,
Frank, I'm just going to interrupt briefly. So you're speaking on behalf of BVHNA, and you want to speak for quite a long time. So I'm inferring, or I think you're inferring that other members of the BVHNA won't be speaking formally from that perspective.
well, you have to understand that the BVHNA is not a military organization. They're individuals with their own opinions. And what we put together here was based on the February 2nd submission as part of the stakeholder and the analysis that we all later put on for council that we sent copies to council with. So what this is a quick overview of what we sent to council, and also some additional points that we've been talking about more or less. Not all of them are agreeable to everybody, but I think we, generally speaking, the package that I would be presenting is amenable to most members.
Okay, thank you.
So first of all, this is the first citizen discussion in 30 years on this issue, and I have to thank council for allowing this discussion. Unfortunately, it's hard to solve a 30-year problem in a 2-hour window, but we'll do what we can. And really, this is not just a minor lease renewal, but it's a land use issue that deserves diligence and about what's finally approved and accountability on how it's implemented. And you know, I don't blame Alpine. They're a reputable, profit-based company just doing what the lease allows them to do. But in the end, council decides what is in the greater public interest. And this is a global issue. It's not just in Canmore. A quick search on the internet will show that you see activism anywhere. Helicopters fly over urban and rural areas, the Grand Canyon, New York, London, Hawaii, even Nepal. So we're not special in that regard. And I think we also all agree that the noise is real. There may be many parts of town not affected by the noise, but I think we all agree that the town council, the general citizens, and Alpine, that this is a relevant issue that has to be addressed. Now, the lease analysis that we have for you, there's more to it that we sent you in an earlier email, but I'll just go over some of the broad points. And if you want more details, we have a website, bvhna.org/hearing. The first point was 25% is not really 25%. I think we all realize now that exceeding 45 flights per day, it was a small fraction of the tourist flights in 2018, less than 9% of the tourist season. So what does that mean? Well, the tenant keeps their annual volumes and can just sharpen their marketing and scheduling to make up the rest. So it means really 90 arrivals and departures daily. And with the protection of a 10-year lease, if that's what the lease length is going to be, it's a lucrative market share, and they'll be growing that aggressively because they're trying to recover from COVID just like anybody else. That's just business. In terms of the 12 versus 20-minute flights, we were really happy to see the end of the 12-minute flights. It was such a relief. But, you know, we lost our hope when we found out that they got replaced by 20-minute flights. Now, the analysis we sent to council shows these flights are very marketable, especially for bus tours and potential volume discounts. At about $10 a minute Canadian, that's comparable to flying over Disney World in Orlando or over the Grand Canyon. There was a statement in the lease that said maximum of 4 flights seeing helicopters. Well, that's no change from what was there all along. So that's business as usual. And we have to ask why there's no annual cap on tourist flights. How do you control daily noise when 90 ups and downs can occur every day? How do you reduce carbon emissions when you don't limit the overall footprint? We recommended in our February 2nd submission an annual cap equal to all non-tourist flights. That was somewhere around 750 flights, and a daily cap of 15 flights seeing tourists per day. And you might be asking, you know, why we recommended 15 per day. So that works out to a bus tour per day plus a couple of shuttle buses. So in this case, our recommendation doesn't mean no flight seeing tours, but we want to bring it back to a reasonable level. We also had experience in 2019 with 2 bus loads and 22 flights in 2 hours. That was a war zone. So, you know, 22 flights in itself was really hard to take. So we put it down to 15. In terms of greenhouse gas performance standards, I think it was mentioned earlier that there's really no game plan here. The staff will have to make it up as they go. And they mentioned that the potential there is for carbon offsets and planting trees, but that really won't make a difference in the valley. This paying to emit then just becomes a shell game. So it's less tourist flights really that make an immediate impact. And that's fairly easy to do just by the stroke of a pen. And in terms of noise performance standards, This was the same wording as the previous lease, but there really hasn't been any examples that I can think of where it's really made a difference over time. Finally, in this case, you have to ask the question, who benefits? And, we're pleased that the town will collect data on what flight seeing money actually contributes to the local economy, but we're concerned about how the data is designed or cherry picking statistics to suit an agenda. The proposed lease assumes it's in the greater public interest to keep business as usual for flight seeing tours, but we saw no reasoning behind it. And I can understand the normal person thinking sightseeing tours keep staff employed and paying taxes and stuff, and it keeps the community growing, but growth for growth's sake is not the same as vitality. Otherwise, council would have voted to allow segways downtown, if you remember that discussion. You also need to factor in how to value quality of life for those who have to live with the flight seeing noise, or is money the only variable? One more thing on this point. Can you imagine a future Canmore where heli-tourist flights don't dominate the sky, where sunny days can be enjoyed in our own yards or in the backcountry? Is that too costly to imagine? Or would that actually be positive for the Canmore brand? So what can council change on this? Administration's giving you a package. So there's things that you have the opportunity to send them back for. And one of them, everybody needs to have some COVID recovery time, and businesses all over need recovery time, and it might take some years to do that. So we'd suggest incrementally stepping down the number of daily flights each year and reduce it until you get to 15 flights per day during the life of the lease. And two things that you can do immediately with just changing two numbers is to change from 20-minute flights minimum to 30-minute flight minimums, and reducing the tourist helicopters from 4 to 2. Changing these numbers makes a big difference. And we've already talked about reducing the tourist flights to 15 a day and creating an annual cap, so I won't go over that. One thing we thought about was, well, the talk of
Frank, if I could just interrupt you past 8 minutes now, I think, and there are a lot of people that want to be able to speak. So you have provided this in an email, I think you mentioned.
Is it all right if I go to the last point about the conclusion then?
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go past the other things that you can change, which are relevant, and competitive bidding, allowing comments, seriously studying the location of the heliport, even though it's not on the table. And in terms of the conclusion, what I see is just business as usual with a few fig leaves. As it is, this lease will just divide the community for a long time. And the heli-tourism in Canmore morphed into a monster over time. We're really concerned that by signing this proposed lease, it becomes a template for the next lease and entrenches these volumes forever. We're also concerned that the current flight seeing business model becomes too big to fail, and residents in the noise footprint just become an acceptable collateral damage. And finally, I feel privileged to have been here for 25 years, and I see Canmore going down the same path as all those other oversaturated tourist towns. So council, please take a close look at this lease. You are the last chance to change things. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Frank. And you did provide all of this in an email, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and the point about the quieter helicopters was an add-on, because it would be nice to have a demo for that one day.
Great. Okay, thanks very much, Frank. Who's next, Robin?
It is Andre Renner, and Mr. Renner is speaker number 7, and we currently have a total of 23 speakers requesting to speak this evening.
Andre.
Yep, I'm here. I should be unmuted. I'm still no video. Where's the video? Well, you can't see video. Well, I'm with Mount Assiniboine Lodge Limited, so obviously we're very concerned that I mean, if the heliport was not to be a heliport, I think our business would cease to exist. So that's a huge statement. Like,
Are you still there, Andre?
yeah, are you hearing my mic?
Yeah, I can hear you. It just went blank for a minute there.
Okay. Yeah. So it's I mean, we're very concerned that that Alpine Helicopter still stays at Canmore Heliport because it's we can't operate without helicopters. I mean, nobody also wants pack trains of 50 clients want baked beans anymore. So we're just concerned that I mean, there's a certain point where a heli operation cannot be in Canmore if the rescue contracts and the backcountry lodges supply. At one point, helicopters are very expensive to operate. So flight scene tours, if they're reduced too much, might mean that no heli operator is able to operate. Rescue helicopters from very far away, and or they might not be able to get to places to rescue people because of weather, and quite a different situation. So we're just concerned if there's too much of a squeeze, it's going to be tough for the whole community in terms of you'll start to hear about people dying in the newspaper because there's a certain, for a business to operate. Helicopters are very expensive to operate, and it's there's many people in town that work for Alpine Helicopters in the Assiniboine Lodge, and I'm quite happy to say that none of them have to live in vans because they're it's actually a good people can make a living with backcountry lodges and at the heliport. So it's also, I would agree with Gord about greenhouse gas argument is a bit of a tough one when you mix in all the tourist activities and highway going through, railway, and all the house building, just the sheer volume of cement, the amount of CO2 to make cement in the town of Canmore is just absolutely huge, and I think it dwarfs. I mean, everybody wants to make an effort, but you pour one basement on a 3,000 square foot home, and that's a huge CO2 impact. And I think that's about all I have to say.
Thanks very much for joining us tonight, Andre.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker is Robert Milko.
Mr. Milko. I see his name. Mr. Milko, are you unmuting? There you go. You just need to unmute yourself, sir. Turn your mic on. Mr. Milko, we can't hear you. Yeah, okay. Hello, Mr. Milko. Does anybody have contact information for Mr. Milko?
I did just send him a note, but I don't think he can see or hear us.
Maybe we could move on to somebody else and Mr. Milko could speak a little bit later.
Okay, the next speaker is Donna Balmain.
Ms. Balmain.
Sorry, did you hear anything?
No. Is that Mr. Milko?
The host has disabled my video.
We can hear you now, but nobody could hear anything.
I have no idea what you're hearing. Heather, can you see? Heather, am I on at all?
Yes, you have been. But
Hello.
Yeah, I guess you can't hear us either.
Someone
But
let me know if you heard anything that I said, because it sounded like the host, I had a message, the host would not let me use my, could not let me unmute.
Bob needs to unmute.
I am unmuted.
you are now, sir, but you weren't when you were speaking.
Hello.
You need to turn your, well, I think we should move on to Ms. Balmain, and somebody from admin could contact Mr. Milko and help him out.
Click on
The
this.
host keeps muting.
And if you could mute Mr. Milko for now, thank you. Ms. Balmain.
I'm getting a note saying that I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it.
Well, go ahead and speak. We can hear you. There you are.
There we go. The host started my video. Okay. I'd like to thank you all for your being here tonight and for your interest in what has become a serious problem for many of the residents in this town. It's no secret you've heard about the number of tourists that has increased exponentially over the last few years. And what was once a municipal heliport is now a base for industrial helicopter tourist business in a residential area. I doubt that that was the intention in 1988. Helicopters have become the workhorses of the mountains, and Alpine hold contracts with federal and provincial governments to do that work, including rescue work for which they are paid. On a fact sheet published by Alpine Helicopters, they stated they have 7 heliports from which they operate and only 2 have a tourism business. This means that 5 of the 7 are surviving quite nicely without tourism by working with other contracts. It is clear, therefore, a municipal heliport does not need tourist flights to be financially viable. I would like to throw out a challenge and have you think of something. What would happen if the flight seeing component was moved out of town to perhaps a private leasehold in Kananaskis? That's a question for Alpine to investigate, but why would they, since they're so comfortable here? The 3 comments I have heard when I've asked that question is, 1, tourists won't drive out that far for a helicopter flight. But that's what tourists do when they come here. They drive all over the place. They even get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to drive to Moraine Lake. And of course, tourist buses will go wherever they are driven. Well, what about the economic benefit to the town if the flight seeing was moved out? There's no doubt Alpine employ local staff. However, I personally have difficulty seeing how helicopter flights has more to offer our other businesses in Canmore. There are 2 types of clientele that utilize the tours. One is from tour buses. They arrive, they have the helicopter tour, and they leave. They don't even see the rest of Canmore, never mind spend any money here.
Ms. Balmain, if I could just interrupt for a moment.
Yes.
This is, we're really hoping to hear about your perspective on Schedule D rather than
this is Schedule D because it speaks to the amount of helicopter tours that we have.
No, there's actually a lot of conjecture, and what I would really appreciate, because we have a limited amount of time and we want to hear from everybody, is that we would stick to Schedule D, please.
Okay, so let's look at what the proposed new lease is actually suggesting. The town has erroneously claimed that the new lease will reduce helicopter flights by 25%. That's just not true. The new lease will reduce the daily allowable flights by 25%. That's different. Extrapolating from figures on the town website, I can estimate that the summertime the flights are about 40 to 50 tourist flights a day. Essentially, business as usual when it's reduced to 45. Since tours comprise 80% of Alpine's business, then an additional 20% should be added to the total number of flights. So 45 flights per day now become 54. Remember too, what goes up must come down. So the proposed lease allows for over 108 takeoff and landings per day. That's just too many. Alpine themselves state the noise of a helicopter taking off is 85 decibels, about the sound of sitting next to a large transport vehicle or passing train. Imagine that 100 times a day. But it's not just the decibel count of a helicopter that must be considered. Our brains can accommodate to a steady sound, such as a ticking clock or a radio playing in the background. But a helicopter sound is loud and intermittent and demands that our brains pay attention. This is a basic survival mechanism which helps humans and other animals be aware of and avoid danger. We cannot turn this off. Intermittent noise is universally annoying. Listening to it over a long period of time, like other noise pollution, increases basic stress levels. The new lease also limits the number of helicopters to 4 in the sky at one time. Again, this is no change. I'll speak a little to the motherhood statements regarding noise levels, greenhouse gases, and odors. Goals should be SMART goals: sustainable, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-defined. Nothing ever gets done without deadlines. But this lease has no targets, no penalties, and still nothing for the Heliport Monitoring Committee to do. Alpine give this committee an annual report. They essentially monitor themselves. So what control does this proposed lease actually have? It appears to be business as usual. The major concern, however, is the concentrated noise of 1 or 2 or more tour buses at 50 to 60 seats each. I applauded Alpine when they moved the 12-minute flights out to the auxiliary heliport and voluntarily stopped the 12-minute tour at weekends, because that was a notable and appreciated decrease in the noise. Felt great, and we felt we were being heard. They told us the tours had been moved out and would not come back. However, the 12-minute tour has been changed to a 20-minute tour and returned to the heliport 7 days a week. 20-minute tours may take guests a little further out of town, but all of them still have to take off and land at the heliport. A 20-minute tour with 4 helicopters still means 1 takeoff and landing every 5 minutes. And this is not a quick, short sound. I can hear a helicopter heading out for 1 to 2 minutes and returning for 2 to 3 minutes. When they're running back-to-back helicopter tours, the engine and blades are not turned off while loading and unloading. Thus the helicopter sitting on the tarmac with continued noise.
So why is... Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Balmain. You're running past 8 minutes.
And I'm almost finished.
Okay, thank you.
So my question is, why is Alpine able to infringe on the town's own noise bylaw day after day? Alpine is not a small operation. They generate an annual revenue of over $40 million and are owned by a
Schedule D, please.
Of international companies. They perform essential services in our mountains, which I appreciate, but they ask residents living nearby to pay a very high price for that. I don't mind the occasional sound of a helicopter, but I think we seriously need to look at a plan for reducing helicopter noise in town. I, for one, am tired of being collateral damage for big business. Thank you. I am finished.
Thank you. And I will ask speakers to really focus on the terms of Schedule D, or now Schedule C. And I'll look to Ms. Dinaj to see who's speaking next.
Yes, our 9th speaker tonight is Dennis Brayman, and we currently have 24 people requesting to speak this evening.
And we're an hour into it, so really I would ask people to try to be as brief as possible.
I will endeavor to do so. I do not intend to take up the 8 minutes. I will be as brief and succinct as I can be. My perspective comes as an individual who is a resident of Grotto Mountain Village now for 6 years. I own a tourist accommodation that I operate out of my home. So the heliport impacts me and my clients. I'm also further impacted as an employee of a tourist company that operates heli hiking from the Canmore Heliport. So I understand both sides. I do hear the heliport. I hear it over the din of the highway, which does run 24/7. I appreciate this is not Schedule C. However, all those who have an environmental concern, I would encourage you to join Yellowstone Yukon and myself and others in concentrating on Highway 1, which does cause significant animal deaths due to strikes in the hundreds per year, as well as the noise and the greenhouse gases of the highway. My concern from an employee that benefits from the helicopters is that moving the tourist flights out would reduce the number of machines available to us. If those flights were moved to Kananaskis, for example, to the Stony Nakoda, that would increase our flight time to Mount Charles Stewart by a factor of 2 to a factor of 3. Since the helicopter is our major cost in these services, that would effectively double to triple the cost that we would have to pass on to our consumers, which would effectively end that portion of our business. So speaking as an employee who works in the tourism industry, we all know the suffering specifically that this industry has endured because of COVID, with international borders being closed. That I would just ask everyone to take into account that the tourism industry does not require a further blow here. And that is all I need to say. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir.
Next speaker is Jacob Herrero.
Jacob.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. So I think my perspective is somewhat unique. I'm a longtime Canmore resident, and I've recently moved to the Hospital Hill area from the Riverstone area in Cougar Creek. And I lived in Cougar Creek for 3 decades. But as someone who's lived in both locations, I can tell you that there really is a day and night difference in helicopter noise between the 2 locations. And if you don't live within 1 kilometer of the heliport, and many people in Cougar Creek do, or under one of its main flight seeing paths, it's hard to really imagine what it's like. And true, not everyone is equally affected by noise. Some people don't mind very loud motorcycles or vehicles circling around their neighborhood, or very loud, long parties next door, or loud sightseeing helicopters landing and taking off every 5 to 10 minutes, potentially 365 days a year, 7 days a week, which is what the new lease would allow. However, I really do believe the majority of people are affected to some degree by noise pollution, and this is why communities across Canada like Canmore have noise bylaws. And to comply with common noise bylaws found in many Canadian communities, the Canmore Heliport would have to be located at least 1.2 kilometers away from residential areas. However, Canmore's municipally owned heliport is currently within, I think one earlier presenter said, about 250 meters, less than that, of some residential areas. That's very close. Heliports in other mountain communities, similar to Canmore, here I'm talking about Whistler, Revelstoke, Golden, Squamish, they're all at least 1 kilometer away from dense residential areas.
Jacob, do you have any thoughts specific to Schedule C? How to manage that, or how to suggestions as to how Schedule C may be improved, or?
Yeah. Okay. I'll fast forward a bit, but given what I've just said, however, I want to make it perfectly clear that Alpine's rescue and essential services are not the problem. Everybody's willing to accept that. It's the commercial flight seeing flights, which are 80% of the flights. The lease, I don't think there's enough about the helicopters. I mean, these helicopters were designed when I was born. I'm 60 years old. That's a long time for a particular piece of technology. I'm in the technology business, so 60 years is unbelievable. I mean, it's attributed to the design, but at the same time, helicopter design has moved on. This helicopter, the 206, that's used for flight seeing here in Canmore, the rescue flights, that's a different helicopter. The ones that go into Assiniboine, that's a different helicopter. That's the 407, but the 206 is a helicopter that's no longer manufactured, and it's very loud. It's the second loudest in its class. And there are other areas have dealt with this same problem that we're here tonight talking about, and that's excessively loud helicopters. And out of that, the industry responded. They responded with the EC 130, which was designed and built to address noise issues associated with helicopter flight seeing. And they're 40% quieter, which is significant. And they're used in places like Niagara Falls, Grand Canyon, Whistler, Hawaii. And it would be really unfortunate if, due to the lease, which doesn't specify quieter helicopters, if Canmore became the place where the old loud 206s went to go to die, because we're one of the few communities willing to tolerate the noise. So a few things on the lease. I believe 10 years is too long. It was mentioned that Alpine has a 5-year lease at the casino. I believe that or less is more appropriate. Eliminate or greatly reduce the sight seeing flights. The proposed 45 flights a day, as others have mentioned, is not really a reduction. It's a business as usual. Their 20-minute flights are only $50 more than their 12-minute flights. That's just not big enough of a price difference to make a shift in, I think, consumer choice. So it would, 25, 30 minutes might, but 20 minutes at $50, a difference between 12-minute flight and a 20-minute flight, I don't think that's enough to really make a difference. So I'll wrap it up there. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've been waiting for a very long time to speak on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
We
Robin,
will try.
how many are there hoping to speak this evening?
24 in total, and I think we may have Robert Milko ready to go again.
Okay, once again, I'll ask people to try to be quick in their suggestions. Thank you. Mr. Milko, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I hope you can hear me and maybe see me.
We can hear you now.
Great. So, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'd like to start off with respect to the schedules you're interested in, is saying that for the most part, I support the Helicopter Noise Alliance positions. I also like to say that if we do have these bylaws in Canmore about noise, this is an opportunity to show enforcement, and we should be enforcing them. And if these helicopters are outdated, it's time for them, Alpine, to bring in some new, quieter helicopters, as Jacob alluded to. I'm a little surprised because I understood that Alpine put on some new rollers and tailpieces that were supposed to be a bit quieter. And maybe it all depends on where you live in the valley. We're in Silvertip. And when a helicopter comes through the valley, starting last year, I said to people, I said, oh my gosh, it must be a big rescue helicopter or a military one. There's a different kind of reverberation that happens at distance versus being close, I imagine, with these new kind of rotors. So lately I've found the noise to be actually worse for where we live, and in particular, I guess, because maybe there are more flights going up Cougar Creek as well. So I'm actually, although I support the Helicopter Noise Alliance, I don't see any role for tourism-based helicopters in a town. I just quickly said, okay, I know a couple of other towns, Juneau, Alaska, Aspen, Colorado. Their heliports are outside of town. They don't have the noise issues in the town. And, you know, times have changed and it's time for Canmore to come around to it. There might be other uses for that land. We get a little bit of revenue from the lease. I'm sure the town has given some thought to how they could use that land, otherwise sell it for other purposes. So I'm not in favor of these tourist flights, not including heli hiking, heli weddings. I do believe that there'd be enough to maintain this, perhaps, if we need it here for rescue, research, and lodge access. But even for those aspects, if they could be located out of town, for a rescue, it takes about 5 extra minutes to get here from, for example, Stony Nakota Casino Port to here. It's not a big deal as far as a rescue goes. I'm sorry if someone happens, you know, they're buried. Yes, I realize that, but you know, there are many rescues going down south in Kananaskis nowadays too. So there is no real epicenter for rescues. So for the most part, I would just say it's time for us as a town to mature and realize that there are needs of residents here, there are needs of businesses, but the residents, perhaps it's time for the town to listen to the residents and to shut down all this noise inside the town when it's not necessary. People alluded to the highway, well, it's here, it will always be here, it cannot be moved. The heliport can be moved. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Our next speaker is Chris Beers.
Hi there, everyone can hear me okay?
Hello, Mr. Spears, yes.
How's it going today?
Well, thank you.
So yeah, I work for Alpine. I'd just like to say that up front here because this does directly impact my livelihood in this valley. I was born and raised in Canmore. You know, with pertaining to Schedule C, I guess I could talk to the 8:30 to 5 that's stipulated on tours. From the day I started flying with Alpine, that has been crystal clear to me. And not even just from the town's perspective, but passed down from management that this needs to be done. Pertaining to the number of flights per day, particularly with tours, once again, like if this is cut back anymore, it once again affects my livelihood, and not just myself, but all the people that work at Alpine here. You know, the tourism crew supports anywhere up to about 30 people. And by cutting down that, you do affect the ability for us to live in the valley, to afford to live in the valley when we get, you know, we're well compensated for our time. Pertaining to with the tourism, the money doesn't just come into us and they immediately leave the valley, right? I'm in a unique position where I fly with these people and I talk to them, and they want to come to the valley, yes, for a flight, but then they stay for lunch or they spend the night, and they do that in Canmore. They don't just come in and leave, right? Especially when we look at now with COVID, there are a lot of people coming from Calgary, from the surrounding area that are just looking to travel local and support local businesses. And I struggle when, you know, yes, we are a bigger company, but we are people that live in this community. And these changes to the schedule do have a direct impact on us. You know, for myself, I started on tours, and one day I would like to be a rescue pilot. I make no secret of that. But without the tourism flights, I can't get there, right? This is my entry into this industry. Speaking to the flight time, he mentioned it's a 5-minute difference from Stony Nakota. Depending on the day, that can be drastically different for factors such as wind and stuff. We could be looking at 15 minutes for a helicopter to get to Canmore or to Banff, right? So there are real impacts in moving the heliport that need to be thought about before just coming to these snap decisions. I kind of, in closing here, I'll keep it short. I would encourage the members of council just to go on to the Rocky Mountain Outlook page on Facebook and look at the article on April 30th, read some of the comments there. You know, you're going to hear today from people that are really charged for or against it. Obviously, it's a hot topic in the community. Whereas there, you're going to find a lot more locals that I do hope they do show up tonight. But, you know, they took the time just to leave a quick comment because maybe they're not available to come and join us with this. Yeah, I'd like to thank you for your time, and that's all for me.
Thank you very much, Chris.
We are on speaker number 13, and I'm interpreting their initials that they registered with, but I believe it's Mark Ledwidge who's speaking next.
Hello there. Yes, it is. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so yes. I sent a letter to Town Council last March on this issue, and if anybody would like to see it, they're welcome to get it. And essentially, it was on the business level. So my background is I worked for Parks Canada for well over 30 years in the rescue business, so I'm well versed in what that's all about. And you know, my message I think would be to all the participants here is just be a little careful that you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater here, because, and I'll be very clear in terms of any kind of biases. I'm not involved with Alpine Helicopters, you know, financial investment in them. I do work for a company that provides rescue equipment for Alpine Helicopters for rescue work, and but I think that's not necessarily relevant. But in any event, my message is that for a company to be relevant and financially viable in Canmore as a rescue, or sorry, as a helicopter company, is the helicopter business, rescue business is not going to be enough. One of your previous submitters talked about contracts with Parks Canada. Parks Canada does not have a rescue contract with Alpine Helicopters. They are on a standing off, which means that basically if they ask for an hour of flight time, they pay for an hour of flight time. They don't guarantee flight time. And in the helicopter industry, that's a really big deal. And the way that Alpine Helicopters or any helicopter company operating in Canmore would make that work is to supplement it with other income. And in this case, it's tourism. And so if you take tourism away from Alpine Helicopters or any other helicopter company that would be based in Canmore, it would be pretty tough to make it viable given the, I guess, you know, the cost of living in the Bow Valley. So that's my big pitch is tourism is required for a company to run a helicopter industry in the Bow Valley. On a big fire year, sure, you know, a helicopter company will make a lot of money. But you look at the last 2 years, especially with COVID, no fires. And if you look, and of course, you know, the assets at risk in the Bow Valley are huge, right? You know, we all know what they are. So we need to have an available helicopter company that can immediately respond to fire response. So everybody seems to think that we can just move it east of here. Well, east of here means, to be frank, Springbank or Calgary. And, you know, if you do that, then, you know, the rescue response and immediate fire response is no longer there. Okay, so that's, you know, my one pitch. And then somebody else made a pitch about quieter helicopters. Yes, they are available in the world. But with all due respect to the people that brought that up, helicopters are an expensive piece of equipment. And I think one of the previous speakers talked about the 206 and the 206 Long Ranger. They are correct. They are pretty old technology. But what it means is that they are, you know, I don't want to use the word cheap, but they are affordable technology. So when you start talking about anything that's twin engine, quiet technology, you start to get into the $5 to $10 million US type of aircraft. And you can't make that pay in the Bow Valley. Which is why in Canada, in Western Canada, you know, those types of helicopters are few and far between. And which is why the old war horses of the helicopter industries, whether it's the 206s or the 407s or the A-Stars and the various versions, are still, you know, what makes tourism and rescue and heli skiing and in the medium world and the 212, you know, work. So I guess my message to the community and to town council is, I started with this, do not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because you can outrun helicopter rescue / firefighting industry to protect the Bow Valley without the financial support of helicopter tourism.
I think you've captured your primary message there, and we're at 5 minutes. There's still a number of people that are hoping to speak, so I'll thank you for joining us this evening, and allow the next person to speak.
Our next speaker is number 14, Nancy Krysak, and we have 24 people registered to speak this evening. Nancy, you're next. Oh, I'm just getting a note that she may have dropped off the call. So right after Nancy would be Jim and Patsy Murphy.
Mr. and Mrs. Murphy.
Good evening, Mayor Borman and councillors. I've just slashed my long speech, or our long speech, for the sake of brevity.
Good, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about this helicopter lease renewal issue. We've lived in Cougar Creek since '89 and been in the valley since '74. Based on the fact that we are stuck with the heliport in Canmore for at least the next lease period, we again state our support for the use of helicopters based on the Canmore heliport for essential services only. We do not support having 45 sightseeing flights per day staging out of the town of Canmore's heliport. Heli hiking, heli weddings, and amateur professional photography and filming should be included as sightseeing flights. All of these functions are tourist oriented. We strongly recommend moving all or most of the sightseeing flights to Alpine's helipad, the Stony Nakota casino site. This is not eliminating tourist flights, it's just moving it down valley. Based on the fact that the flights would be 20 minutes long, we could have a situation where there would be a landing or a takeoff happening every 6 minutes over the entire day. That's every 6 minutes, there would be an irritating noise impact on nearby residents. It should be noted that each takeoff or landing creates a disturbing level of noise for well over 1 minute each time. But the bottom line is that the allowance is for a total of 90 noisy sightseeing takeoffs and landings in one day with the new lease. Don't forget, there are all the essential service flights that will also be taken off and landing throughout the same day. Okay, I'll just hand it over to my partner.
So in summary, the changes we would like to see in Schedule C are as follows. With respect to Section 3A, number 6, regarding the number of helicopter flights per day, this section should be revised to state not to exceed a maximum of 15 flights per day. This would allow Alpine to serve 1 tour bus a day or several walk-ins daily. Under Section 3A, a definition of sightseeing flights should be established. It should include tourism, sightseeing, heli hiking, heli weddings, amateur professional photography, and filming. Under Section 3D, number 1, it should be reworded to indicate that no helicopter maintenance hovering should occur on Sundays. Such hoverings can last for several minutes. And in Section 7 in the new lease regarding noise reduction, it asks Alpine to provide research, implementation, and reporting, but it includes no time-bound benchmarks against which the tenant will be held accountable. There should be a requirement for the tenant to produce plans for improvements in noise reduction and include measurable time-bound targets before the new lease commences. There are no penalties associated with Section 7 if the tenant does not reach the benchmark identified. There should be penalties included in the lease. So in conclusion, by minimizing the number of tourist-oriented flights per day, we feel that this will greatly reduce the noise pollution, as well as reducing other negative aspects that currently exist. We would prefer that all sightseeing flights be eliminated from the town of Canmore's helipad, but as a compromise, we would agree to a maximum of 15 flights per day. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much, and thank you for focusing on recommendations and suggestions for Schedule C. That's quite helpful. Ms. Dinaj.
Our next speaker is Dave Ouellette, but I believe he may have dropped off the meeting. So we'll just give him a moment in case he's logged in as a different name. And if not, up next is speaker 17 is Roger.
Hi, Mayor Borman and councillors. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today on the helicopter issue, the helicopter lease issue. We've been living up the helicopter landing site for over 20 years. We moved here and the helicopter noise was not so bad at that time when you were sitting on the deck and enjoying a cup of coffee on a Sunday. I work 5 days a week, and usually Sunday is my day off. And usually I would go outside and hang around the deck and watch the odd helicopter go up and come down, and that was kind of interesting. But today, it seems to be a continuous driving noise in terms of how many helicopters are active at any particular moment. I walked the creek several times, and I've sometimes seen like 4 helicopters in motion at the same time, like the blades are spinning. One's coming in, there's 3 that are unloading and loading or something like that. Another one's going up, another one just went up, one after the next. There doesn't seem to break. Sometimes I feel like I'm living right next to the Calgary International Airport. So the number of flights here that are being suggested, 45 flights, and that's 45 times 2 because you're going up and then coming down, is incredible. It's just incredible for a community which has so much residential so close by. Today I just went for a walk at 3:30 to get out of the office for a minute, the home office, and there's a helicopter going up. For about a minute and a half, I couldn't hear anything except the helicopter noise. Okay, which is kind of cool, but when you see it so many times during a day, it can start to get kind of bothering. So when I look at section Schedule C and section 3, and then it says, well, we operate for 7 days a week. Is there no time that a person get a break in the morning, like a Sunday morning? There's no helicopter noise? Can we not have it start up at noon? Some of the airports around the world, they don't start up until a certain hour before the flights can come in or leave the flights, just to give the residents a break. Is there not a time in the morning we can take a break? Is there not a Monday or a Tuesday that are going to be closed so we can have some quiet and peace and quiet? Do we plan on that? Or do we have to just put up with this all day long here? So this flight of 20 minutes longer or 20 minutes or longer or 25 minutes, that doesn't matter to me. That's irrelevant. It's how many are going up and coming down. As simple as that. And when you look at it, 45 flights is just too much, and the hours of operations are too much. There's got to be a balance there somewhere along the way. I'm not living beside a Calgary International Airport. I'm living in Canmore, which is supposed to offer peace and quiet and tranquility in my life. And that's just not there when I'm living with that kind of, they might send 10 flights up Sunday morning. What do I know? What control do I have over that? Can I plan on sitting with my friends outside on my deck and enjoying a coffee? There's no control. They want to send 10 flights up. They get 4 tour buses. Off they go. They got 45 flights they can do. They can do all those ups and downs within 4 hours if they wanted to. I'm not sure what the flight schedule with the Canada regulations are for aviation or anything like that, but it's certainly a bother for me when I am sitting there. The second point I'd like to bring up is that there are quieter helicopters and there are more fuel efficient helicopters. There are planes they're building today that are more fuel efficient and quieter in the noise. Just for that reason, environment of pollution, air pollution, environment of noise pollution. They're building these today. I don't care what the costs are. I'm not in the business of alpine helicopters or raising money, not raising money, justifying it, not justifying it. But why should we get all the helicopters that are rejected by everybody else? Yeah, they're cheap to run. Of course there are. There's a reason for that. Nobody else wants them. So if you're going to finance and run a helicopter business, go ahead. But make it so it's quiet for the local residents at least, so they can enjoy. It's not like the noise is clobbered with the other city noise here. This noise is the only noise that's there, and it reverberates across the mountains. It comes right over to my deck. So I'll say that out of all this, the noise is my most bothering thing. And so if you can do something about it, maybe balance it, maybe say, well, okay, guess what? Fly so many from here, fly so many from over there. Find another place to fly if it's not economical for you to be here. I like the business idea. I like a lot of contribution that the helicopters bring to the town of Canmore, but eventually business finds a way to find it to go for somewhere else if it's feasible. It doesn't just have to be here all the time. So thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry I'm being so passionate about this, but it does bother me sitting on my deck. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for joining this evening, Roger.
Our next speaker, number 18, is Vita Yamamoto.
Working on it. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So I am a member of the Helicopter Noise Alliance, and I live on Cougar Creek on Grizzly Crescent. So like the speaker just before me, noise is the big issue. Not being able to enjoy my backyard, my deck, like many other people in Canmore can, on a beautiful sunny day, is a concern, and I believe it is a right that I have as a citizen of Canmore. There are noise bylaws that protect people from this kind of consistent noise. And I feel totally left out here on my property here in Canmore. Nobody seems to care that there is 7 days a week from 8 to 5:30 plus other flights every single day in the summer, except if it rains, and I'm also inside and my windows are shut. So yes, it is all about the noise. And if you live closer, or depending on how the wind blows, it's also about the smell. I am not against rescue flights. I am backcountry user, my family's backcountry user. We all appreciate the necessity for those flights, nor are they the cause of the problem. They are only 4% of the flights. Also, all those fellow Canmorites or Bow Valley residents or beyond that rely on helicopter services, I understand this as well, and I wish them well. And I do not mind, I do not need continuous silence from helicopters, but I also do not like to hear continuous noise from helicopters. So I feel like there are two parties and we're talking about completely different subjects. They are talking about the need for rescue flights and commercial flights. And we're talking about the lack of need for tourist flights. So in the same vein, this new argument has come up about how does it compare with Greenhouse to Volker Steffen or Bremer Engineering? The two completely different subjects. One is completely unnecessary, a luxury for a few people who want to have a little joyride, and the other one is construction and progress and work for our community and safety and so on. How can one possibly make such a comparison? So the answer is really very simple, and really the only answer that will work. Fewer flights in combination with quieter helicopters. Fewer flights will make less noise, nothing else. A helicopter is a noisy machine, and no matter how it flies and when it flies and how often it flies, it makes the same amount of noise. So if you want to have less, you must have less flights. Now you argue, we've reduced it by 25%. I think you've become very familiar with the argument now that 60 flights in the past was so high that Alpine never even reached it. And now the 45 is actually the amount that they can run their business very comfortably at. We know from the past 23 years that I've lived here, it is very loud and consistent if they fly at the rate that they have in the past. And I want to crawl into a hole some days and just say, when are they going to stop? So I would appreciate if you consider the residents in the Cougar Creek area and Grotto and so on, and acknowledge that they too deserve the protection of the noise bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker who requested to speak was Susan Berry. However, her microphone isn't working, so she sent me a note and asked if I could read it for her. Would that be okay, Mayor Barrowman?
Sure.
So she says, for the record, I live up the hill from Alpine. I can hear the trains day and night, especially the 3 and 4 a.m. trains. I can hear the helicopters from time to time, but rarely Alpines. Even though sound tends to rise with the terrain. I think Alpine provides an enormous community benefit, and I support the continuation of their lease at the current site and largely with the revised Schedule D. Her post note was, the bigger problem I have is the ones that fly over the power lines at low level and Stars Rescue, but I'm not registering a complaint against any of them. That was what Susan would like you to hear this evening.
Okay, thanks for that, Susan, and for the brevity. I'll just I just want to remind folks that I think there's still a number of people that do want to speak, and really encourage people to really jump to the nut and give us very specific feedback on Schedule C. Thank you.
Great. We now have 25 people requesting to speak, and number 20 is Bailey Spraggs.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bailey. Thank you so much for the opportunity for letting me to speak tonight. I'll be very transparent. I am one of the sightseeing tour pilots at Alpine Helicopters. I think there's been a lot of misinformation that's been kind of discussed tonight. So I just want to clarify a few things. I'll do my best to keep it really short. I just want to address two main points that have been brought up tonight. There's been a lot of discussion around the rescue program and how it seems most community members are advocates for that program. And we are very fortunate to have extremely talented pilots as part of our rescue program. Unfortunately, the way it is, we cannot have the rescue program without the tourism program. It is not one or the other. 3 out of 4 of our really talented rescue pilots actually got their start with Alpine as part of the tourism program as tour pilots. All the tour pilots we would one day love to follow in their footsteps, and that's not a possibility without the tourism program. It is not one or the other. Another issue that's been brought up a lot is the issue of noise and Alpine being a responsible neighbor. Alpine has done a ton recently, as soon as the noise issues were brought up to address this issue. There's talk of Alpine flying older machines. We have actually reintroduced a new tail rotor to help mitigate noise. So this new, it's called a Van Horn tail rotor, has been implemented across all of the sightseeing tour aircraft. Just as kind of a reference for you, the new Van Horn tail rotors, they produce a decibel sound of about 80.6. As a comparison, you know, the highway in town, a heavy highway, is about 85 decibels. So 80.6 versus 85 decibels of the highway noise, just kind of a point of reference. At the end of the day, Alpine is a huge tourist attraction. We live in a tourist town. Alpine does a ton for the economy. We bring in so many guests. I see them firsthand being a tour pilot, how excited they are to see the Canadian Rockies, how excited they are to come back to the town and spend their money and to continue to support the local economy here. Alpine was established in 1986. And at the end of the day, we're a tourism town where the town grew up around Alpine. Alpine didn't grow up around the town. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Spraggs.
Our next speaker, number 21, is Martha McCallum, and we've had a few more requests to speak. We now have 27 people requesting to speak this evening.
Martha.
Hello, Mayor Borman and Council, and all of your participants who I know probably most of them, so hello. Sorry, I can't see myself. I want to make sure you see me.
Yeah, we can see you, Martha.
Okay, I won't worry about it then.
Yeah.
I just want to introduce myself because my current business that I've been doing 3 years, this is my 4th starting this spring, well, I've had Martha's Heli Hikes since 2010, but now I have Heli Weddings as well, and I moved to start working with Alpine 3 years ago. So I now am feeling very lucky. I have work right in Canmore, and I'm a hiking guide. I'm also a marriage commissioner, and I also have a permit with Alberta Parks to land helicopters on Mount Charles Stewart. So I just wanted to let you know of the impact it would be for me if business were moved to the Stoney Nakoda resort location. What I've been told is my flights would triple from 6 to 8 minutes to 18 minutes to fly from Stoney Nakoda to the Mount Charles Stewart site. And so instead of a heli wedding for a group of 5 people plus me being $3,000, it might become, well, it wouldn't triple, it would probably become $8,000. But I think that would pretty much end my business. So I just wanted to put that out there. It doesn't work out well I don't have a place, I don't have the volumes of people, and I don't have a place to stage as Mount Shark does for some other companies. And I just wanted, everybody's saying we need more time. We do. We're very, very, very careful to always be back by 5 p.m. And I also am constantly, every flight, noticing how very careful the pilots are to take off and go immediately out to the Mount Grotto mine scar and gain their elevation there before they fly up Cougar Creek. So we're trying our best with every single flight, or my pilots are trying to minimize the noise. It's a constant focus, I think, of everybody that works at Alpine. So I just wanted to add that too. And also I'm very interested, concerned about all the noise I'm hearing about. So I just want to say I have a lot of respect for all the other speakers as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Martha, for sharing your perspective.
Our next speaker registered under the initials JB, and it is speaker number 22, out of the total 27 people who have requested to speak this evening so far.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
So yeah, my name is JB. I will be very transparent with you. I'm working with Alpine as well, and I'm a ground crew right now. So yeah, I'm basically working for the tourism side, and Alpine offer me the opportunity, to build my future career as a tour pilot in this beautiful valley. So yeah, what everyone should know, it's during the summer season, Alpine can employ almost 50 people between the Canmore base and the Stony base, including the engineers, and everybody lives in the valley here. Everybody shop local, support local businesses. I fill my tank in Canmore. I dine out. I spend money. I participate in the community. Recently, I joined the Canmore Fire Department, and my other colleague is at the actual fire department. So we are part of the community. We care about the community because we live into it, and we love to be outside. We love to participate in local activities and take care about the environment. So we're just not people coming from who knows where and working as a robot and then leave after 6 months or at the end of the day. So we understand the people who care about the noise. And yeah, I pretty much started in 2018, and it was pretty much at the same time where the Bow Valley Noise Alliance Association was created. And I can tell you that since 2018, Alpine did implement and did a great job to try to lower the impact on the community. So like a lot of people said, there was no more 12 minutes flight. So people said, no, that didn't cut the 25% business, but I actually did. I'm on the base pretty much every day, and I can tell you that we have lowered our number of takeoff and landing considerably, and of course that reduced noise. On the engineer side, they're always trying to upgrade their fleet with the best technology, and that reduce emission and noise as well. Being on the ground every day and working with all the pilots, I can see some operational changes. For example, to reduce idling on the base and some unnecessary flights. And of course, we don't want to just burn gases. Like Alpine is paying for the gas, so it's in the best interest to just burn less gas as possible. So they try to reduce their consumption as much as they can. So yeah, Canmore is a tourism town, and I think we need this to promote the community and to help the town. So yeah, that's all I have to say tonight.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Speaker number 23 is Rachel Ludwig.
Hey, Rachel. Go.
Unmuting myself, yes, sorry.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have many words, so I'll keep it brief. My name is Rachel Ludwig. I'm the interim CEO of Tourism Canmore Kananaskis, and we 100% support Schedule C because it's easy. Our #1 economy in Canmore is tourism. So we need the tourism flights, and we are therefore 100% in agreement with them. They do elevate our destination, our brand, and what I also like about Schedule C is the climate action plan that is set out to be completed by 2023. And Tourism Canmore Kananaskis, we want to be a leader in sustainable tourism by 2029. And I think it aligns very well with our goals there. Alpine Helicopters are a great corporate citizen. They are a great member of Tourism Canmore Kananaskis, but they also went on and reduced their shorter sightseeing flights after complaints from the general public. And they didn't have to. They just did that because they felt it was the right thing to do. They actively seeked out a another base in Kananaskis to do so. So I don't think they should be punished for being proactive on citizen concerns. Lastly, personally, I lived up at Grotto Road until a couple of years ago with my family, and the noise didn't bother me. The highway noise bothered me way more. And my little kids, they just love to see the helicopters take off and land. And I know that the whole Mountain Munchkin daycare typically goes there for a walk to just see the helicopters fly. And they are great citizens, so they have my support 100%. And that's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, number 24, is Naya Noise West.
Miss Noise West.
I'm just figuring out my camera here. Oh, there we go. Whoops.
Can't hear you very well.
Oh, that's skip.
You're very, very quiet. Just
Can you hear me now?
just barely. Do you have are you covering the microphone or anything?
How about how about now?
We'll listen very carefully.
Okay. Maybe I stopped my video and can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Just keep speaking loudly. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I grew up with helicopters flying overhead. I appreciate their business and continue to personally benefit from their services and business. However, I also love this place as a whole. I love it a whole lot. Currently, Schedule C does not meet or exceed the Town of Canmore's Climate Action Plan target of 30% reductions from 2015 levels by 2030. The negotiated reduction to 45 flights will not significantly reduce GHG emissions. No data on GHGs is available to the public, and sections 9 and 8 relating to air quality and the development of a climate action plan do not include time-bound benchmarks against which the tenant will be held accountable. Affordability was mentioned earlier by a speaker and has also been touted as being very important to this council. As a young, below poverty line Canmore resident who works 2 to 4 jobs on any given day and who cares more for this place, not my ability to be here, but for this place itself and its ability to be healthy, let me be absolutely clear. I can afford to not have a single stable job. I know because I've been doing it every day for the past 2 years and I get better and better at it, and I am still here. I can afford to not have stable housing. I know because I've been doing it every day for the past 2 years and I get better and better at it, and I'm still here. I can afford a little less tourism, despite that more than a few of my jobs depend on it. I know because we've all had a loss in tourism over the past year, and we're getting better and better at it, and we are still here. What I cannot afford is climate change. I've done the math, and that's the one thing I cannot mitigate on my own. I cannot afford unbreathable air. I cannot afford not enough water to drink. I cannot afford a global loss in biodiversity and a breakdown of our food systems. I cannot fix any of these things by myself. The only people who can fix these things are GHG emitters under direction of their local leaders. People above the poverty line do not and cannot understand this because you can afford to mitigate climate change. You can afford to buy higher priced food, water, and air. I cannot. If you care about affordability, please insist that Schedule C meet or exceed the Town of Canmore's Climate Action Plan target of 30% reductions from 2015 levels by 2030. Please insist that data on greenhouse gas emissions be made available to the public. And please insist that sections 9, 7, and 8 relating to air quality, noise, and the development of a climate action plan include time-bound benchmarks against which the tenant will be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have 3 speakers left, so we'll keep pushing through to hear the final 3. And again, encourage the speakers to focus on Schedule C and be as concise as possible. Thank you.
We did just have a fourth request, so there's one more to add to that list. But our next speaker is Megan Fink.
Megan Fink, welcome to the gathering.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, my name is Megan. I grew up in Canmore as well and also started flying with Alpine. I worked for them for 12 years. Important part of the community. I mostly wanted to touch on that is the community involvement. So having those tourism flights go as much as they are is kind of the gateway for helicopter pilots to get going. Largely in Canada, there's not too many jobs that you can actually start flying. So Alpine's a big provider and a big mentor. There's so many fantastic mentors at that company to get young folks going, newly licensed people going, and then kind of foster their skill sets and move them into the other work that is done off that base. So work with parks, the fire management, working with the ski hills, like everything that a good mountain town and the larger mountain community needs, like all the backcountry servicing, all the backcountry lodge servicing, everything that everyone seems to enjoy so much is largely serviced through Alpine. So again, it's you can't have one without the other kind of thing. So the tours are quite important to that business to keep it going. So yeah, I just wanted to express how heavily involved they are in the community, even though it's not an in-your-face kind of like, you know, public service. It's there and it's every day, and it comes from having that tourism program. That's how you keep everybody going, right? Like how you keep people that are capable of, you know, doing the other work that is required and is the essential services that Alpine provides. So I don't know. They're a great company to have in the community. They do a lot of good work. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Thanks very much, Megan. We just have a few more people requesting to speak. We'll cut off any more registrations at this time, but of course, people that aren't able to speak can always send an email to council with their thoughts. So Robin, who's next on the dwindling list?
We just had a couple more sneak in under the wire. So Perry Hirsch is our next speaker, number 26, out of a total of 30 people that have now requested to speak. And Mayor Barrowman, am I hearing you correctly? We'll cut it off at that.
Yes, I think we're just about at 8 o'clock now, and I expect councillors will are prepared to stay a bit later to listen. But let's proceed in that manner. So Perry Hirsch.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for allowing me to speak. To be totally transparent, I work for Alpine. I am one of the 4 certified rescue pilots here in Canmore. That's the full disclosure. Speaking on Schedule C, my main concern for Schedule C is changing the number of flights per day, right? That dramatically affects the company's amount of revenue that they can have to make sure to pay for our people. You know, like the world's in a pandemic and a massive economic crisis, and certain stakeholders want Alpine to reduce its ability to run a viable tourism operation, and that shouldn't be on the table. The Bow Valley promotes itself as a tourism destination. It should be promoting and supporting its local tourism operators and not hindering its growth. Like, I think it's going to be hard. We don't know how long it's going to take for all of the tourism industries to recover out of this pandemic. So the reducing our flights in the long term, I think, is the massive struggle to maintain a viable rescue program, because it doesn't live on its own. It needs the tourism to back it up, right? I could go on and on about the hazards of the forest fires and the natural disasters and all the stuff that we work with on the rescue end, but you guys understand what we do for that. So I don't want to blow smoke up anybody's, you know what, so I'm just going to leave it at that. That's my point on Schedule C. So thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, Mr. Hirsch.
Our next speaker is Twyla Jacobson.
Hello.
Hello.
Did that, here we go. Start my video. I'm a little tech challenged. So thank you for letting me speak. I'm a marriage commissioner here in the Valley. I've lived here for about 14 years and I've seen massive changes. But what I really know is that Canmore is tourism as much as I don't want it to be. It is, and my livelihood also supports on that. But I'd like to say I've had the pleasure of working with Alpine Helicopters over the years since I've become a marriage commissioner. And I see Schedule C, which I do support, asks who really benefits. And I have to say that all of Canmore benefits. I've seen Alpine be part of the community. The whole community benefits and small businesses hugely benefits. Hotels and bakeries and restaurants and flower shops and hair and makeup and photographers and videographers, guides and wedding planners. We need to work, and Alpine allows us to do this. And in the zillions of times, not zillions, but many times I've been up, I see them follow the flight paths. I see them really respect the environment and the mountains and the community. And I just really support that they're here and part of us, and we're really lucky to have them. And that's it.
Okay, well, thanks for joining in to share that perspective.
Our next speaker is Lindsay Sinclair.
All right, hi everyone. My name's Lindsay. I am an employee of Tourism Canmore Kananaskis. And I would say that we fully support Schedule C and everything that they're trying to do with this. A couple points, and I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. I've worked with Alpine Helicopters for a number of years, and they are a very large community partner, which I have seen firsthand. They are often the first people to give back to the community when somebody needs help or is looking to do something. They consider the residents. So, for example, taking action without ask. So doing all of those improvements to reduce noise, canceling commercial flights when we understand that COVID is at a large risk. Nobody's asking them to do that. They're choosing to do that because they are always thinking about the community and the safety and well-being of those around them. The other thing I wanted to mention is tourism is the #1 economic driver for Canmore and our entire area. Alpine Helicopters and offering the flight seeing activity, this elevates our community. This differentiates us from our neighboring communities. This is often a deciding factor for visitors choosing to come to Canmore to spend their money than choosing to continue driving to Banff or stopping in Calgary. And so yes, there are other businesses, you know, like the commissioners, like the guides, like those backcountry lodges that are directly affected by Alpine, but there's also a number of other businesses in town as well, because those people are choosing to come to Canmore, taking that heli flight, you know, then they'll stay for lunch and stay overnight and do, you know, spend the afternoon in the shops downtown, things like that. So they also indirectly affect a number of our businesses, and that's something to consider as well. And finally, I think everyone kind of agrees that we want to continue to be able to have our rescue program, and we can't do that without tourism. We need to be able to fund that program to see that continue. So with those points, I just want to say that myself and Tourism Canmore Kananaskis, we fully support Schedule C.
Thanks very much, Lindsay.
Our next speaker is Laura.
Okay. Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak, and I'm glad I got in at the last minute here. I have 2 points that I want to bring up. I'm just going to go outside because we have an echo. The first one is the comments made about moving operations to Stony Nakoda. And well, I disagree completely with even that anybody would ask an operation here, a viable operation that brings so much goodness to our community and economy to move. The logic behind that is actually kind of disturbing to me, that if it's not okay for our community to have the noise, why would it be okay for our First Nation partners? And that's not really in the spirit of reconciliation at all. My second point, I don't have much expertise, but I do know a little bit about climate change. And while I commend the town's climate change action plan and that we all have to be good citizens with curbing greenhouse gases, the reality is it wouldn't matter if Alpine Helicopters increase their business tenfold. It is not going to change what is happening. And it's not going to change the frequency and intensity of disasters. And we are not going to be exempt from those. We've seen what happened in California. We have seen the wildfires that come. We live in a wildfire zone. And I personally am very grateful that we have such qualified helicopter pilots and the infrastructure here to support when disasters come. And I would think that a lot of people who are speaking up about the noise will actually be very, very happy that their houses might get saved. So that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining in. And is that the end of the list then?
We have one more speaker. Colleen Roberts has requested to speak.
Great. Colleen?
So, yeah, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak here last tonight. And certainly this is off the cuff, but it's of interest to me because I grew up in northern Saskatchewan. My father was a bush pilot. He flew fires. He did water bombing. My husband, Bob, who's retired with me here full-time in Canmore, was a conservation officer, and he looked after fires or was in charge of fires in northern Saskatchewan. So I guess the idea of fires is something that's always been part of our life. And I don't think people realize what risk we live when we live in a community like Canmore with fires or the trees so close. We only have to look at Fort Mac, LaRange, Saskatchewan, communities like that have been, devastated by fire. And Alpine is our eyes in the sky. And they're up there. The more time they can spend in the sky, the better that is for our community and the safer that keeps us. Because a forest fire, it happens pretty fast. And if you don't catch it immediately, you may not be able to put it out. Only God is going to be able to put it out. And when you think of us here in the Valley and what we have potentially to lose, to give up Alpine in this community and have them watching regularly of what's happening in the forest surrounding our community would be such a loss and would be putting us at such risk. And when you think of last year, the number of people who came to our community who didn't know how to act in the bush or act around outdoor toilets or how to act, period, and we're going to depend on them to go in the bush and not start a campfire. I mean, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of, or not a matter of when or if or whatever. This is going to happen. And Alpine is our saving grace that they can be up there. So for us personally, who have lived, fighting fires, it's a pretty huge asset that we have here in this community, that they are going up regularly all day long, and they're our eyes in the sky. So anyways, that's just my very quick off the cuff, that this is a huge thing that we never want to lose in this community to keep us safe. So thank you for the opportunity, and that's my thoughts.
Well, thanks very much, Colleen. Well, with that, I will thank everybody for joining in this evening, and remind everybody that's still listening that if you have thoughts to share with council, specifically around the revised lease and Schedule C, If you weren't able to share those thoughts with us this evening, I encourage you to email us at council@canmore.ca so that we'll be able to consider your perspective as we move into the next step of this process. And as I think you all know, the next step is on June 2nd at a council meeting. We will be considering the lease and discussing the renewal of the lease and what the terms might look like. I don't think there's anything else I need to speak to this evening. Robin, is there anything I've missed?
Yes, from my end.
Pardon me?
No, nothing else. All of the information is available at canmore.ca/heliport if people haven't checked there already. And we will put a recording of this town hall on that website.
Excellent. Well, thanks again to all for joining, and it was quite instructive to hear the variety of opinions and perspectives. And I know council will, we have a big job to consider these issues when it comes to the lease discussion in June. But thank you for joining in this evening. And Spock out.